there is no such thing as a non-living wage. Nobody dies on their wage.
Conservative propagandist Ben Shapiro claims that there is no such thing as a non-living wage, essentially saying that he could live off $1 a year. He'd be just fine because there's no such thing as a non-living wage. Well, let me play this ridiculous clip for you, and then I will break this down with actual facts over Ben's feelings.
Well, I mean, first of all, the wage to cost of living gap would not exist in the absence of regulation and subsidy, at least not nearly as much. The fact of the matter is that one of the reasons you have housing shortages in blue areas is because of development restrictions that are largely created by the left. The reason that you have massive inflation right now is, again, because of left-wing financial policy. It tends to be that wages move in tandem with costs, generally speaking, because, again, there is no such thing as a non-living wage. Nobody dies on their wage. And that is not a thing that happens inside the United States. This is why when people say living wage, the question is, well, what do you mean by a non-living wage? Do you just mean a wage that you don't think is high enough? And for what job? And what does the market look like?
Come on now. Nobody dies on their wage. All right, I'll get to breaking this down. But first, it's still amazing. It will continue to be amazing to me that one of the sayings that Ben Shapiro is known for is facts don't care about your feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings. Here he is all feelings. In fact, the vast majority of his commentary is all feelings. I will present to you actual facts. It's constant garbage being spewed by these ridiculous clowns. But this one, I think most people just instinctually know he's full of shit. But those are still your feelings, so let me show you the facts to back up your feelings. First here, though, it's just worth mentioning. This doesn't define a person. Of course, you can learn, change, grow, and use your privilege, your power to do well. But Ben Shapiro was born into a very privileged family. Both of his parents worked in Hollywood. His mother was an executive of a TV company, and his father worked as a composer. This is the guy that rails against the Hollywood elites. Ben Shapiro hates Hollywood, but he was born into Hollywood. Anyways, these are all just clowns. All right. Let me first address the housing aspect of this just quickly, because he mentions here, the reason you have housing shortages in blue areas is because of development restrictions created by the left. I'm sorry, is there guaranteed public housing in the US? Did I miss something? Because that is an actual left-wing policy, guaranteed public housing. That doesn't exist in America. How can he possibly claim that the left is the reason why there is homelessness, when the left is arguing for everyone to have a home? So an example of this, because, oh, David, that's so pie in the sky. You can't, there has to be homeless people. Vienna is known as the most livable city on earth, has been for years. And Vienna once undertook one of the most ambitious public housing programs ever. That is why it is the most livable city on earth. They have real, substantial public housing that has been there for years. And there is a lot of, you can read up on this if you don't know about this. I will link to this link below the video, but just do your own research. Search up Austria or Vienna public housing and you will find it. There is an actual blueprint here that other countries can look to solve any issues around homelessness, poverty. The solution is here in front of us. Yeah, we continue ignoring it because there are, of course, wealthy individuals in real estate that would not want you to be aware of this. So they keep buying up homes. The housing crisis is a whole other, of course, larger topic, but the way that massive corporations now are just buying up, entire communities and then renting out those homes is just absolutely disgusting. But let me get on to the poverty aspect of this, because again, Ben Shapiro claims nobody dies on their wage. Here is the Washington Post. The 2017 U.S. Census Bureau's official poverty measures reports that within the country, 40 million people, more than 1 in every 8 Americans, live in poverty. Almost half of them are categorized as indefinitely in deep poverty, living with less than $2 a day. Ben Shapiro claims if there is, that there is no non-living wage, then he would be able to live off $2 a day, I guess. He'd be fine. He'd have no complaints. Put that together with the fact that in the US, about 2.6 million people die every year, and most of those deaths are associated with poverty. Going on, they write, more broadly, we found that low socioeconomic status was directly linked to bad health, which in turn led to premature death. Such disparities aren't as extreme in other developed countries. The U.S. has the highest rates of poverty and wealth inequality among the world's wealthiest countries, such as Germany, Japan, and the United Kingdom. At the same time, it has lower rates of economic mobility than Spain. So, this alone shows you that the U.S. is an outlier, that there's a lot more that could be done. And to be clear, Germany, Japan, UK aren't perfect either. But compared to the poverty and the wealth inequality in the U.S., there is a massive difference there. And economic mobility. So there's always this idea that, only in America could you be born to two, working class parents and then grow up to become a billionaire or some garbage. In fact, it's the opposite. In the U.S., it is tougher to move out of the situation, of the economic situation you were born into, than in other major countries. In terms of health, the U.S. has the highest infant mortality rate among developed countries, as well as the lowest life expectancy overall. While the citizens of other wealthy nations live longer every year, in the U.S., longevity has declined for the second consecutive year, with early mortality concentrated among the poor. And this is a piece from 2018, so things have not improved since 2018. A lot has happened since then. Also worth mentioning here, Ben Shapiro went to Harvard. He went to Harvard. So I'm saying that because here is a headline from the Harvard Gazette. New study finds 45,000 deaths annually linked to lack of health coverage, which of course is a direct result of poverty. So the study conducted at Harvard Medical School and Cambridge Health Alliance found that uninsured working age Americans have a 40% higher risk of death than their privately insured counterparts, up from 25% excess death rate found in 93. So even though there is now, since this article came out, there is now the Affordable Care Act, more people have access to health care. The insane cost of healthcare, the out-of-pocket expenses, the co-pays, all that garbage, the cost of pharmaceuticals, all of that has gone up. People still, even with coverage, are finding out, hey, actually, even though I'm paying for insurance, this procedure isn't covered, and now I'm bankrupt again. Because medical debt is the most common form of bankruptcy in the U.S. That basically doesn't exist in other countries. If it does, it's like a few people a year. In the U.S., it is the most common form of bankruptcy, medical bankruptcy. Now, I want to get some reactions to Ben Shapiro's clip, because these were good as well, including links that were shared under the video, because universally under this clip that Jason Campbell posted, everyone's making fun of Ben Shapiro. So it's worth and pointing out how ridiculous this claim is. So Scotty here on Twitter says the cost to buy a home 10 years ago was $265,000 and to rent one was $904. Now, as a result of inflation for the last 10 years, those prices are $442,000 to own and $1,180 to rent. Meanwhile, the minimum wage has remained at $7.25 an hour when it should have kept up with inflation to be $22.28 an hour. There are people, and actually I'll show you right now, that work multiple jobs and can't afford to live. Maria Fernandez, this is a piece from HuffPost, who worked 4 jobs, dies while napping in car. So, by the way, she died because I think the fumes from her car, I don't know, it was a weird situation. But regardless, she was working 4 jobs and sleeping in her car. Anytime I see a headline like this, people working multiple jobs, I think back to George Bush, former President George W. Bush, where he was at I think it was a campaign rally or something, but there was a woman who came up and was talking about how she works multiple jobs. And George Bush's reply was, you work 3 jobs. Uniquely American, ain't it? Yes. Yes, it is uniquely American. Though, I'm sure that, I know it definitely exists in other countries. But to the degree that exists in the U.S., it's a much greater degree than what many other countries experience. But the idea that you have to work multiple jobs and still have a hard time making ends meet is, it's sad. And the idea that someone like Ben Shapiro with a massive platform is spouting his nonsense does not help anything. Another headline here that was shared again below the responses to this clip. It's from The Guardian. How can a child die of toothache in the U.S. when a 12-year-old boy lost his life as a result of an untreated tooth abscess in Maryland in 2007? His story revealed how hard it can be for people on low incomes to get the dental care they are entitled to. Another example, insulin's high cost leads to lethal rationing. This is one that I'm sure many people have heard of, are aware of, or have experienced themselves, is because of the high cost of pharmaceuticals. That leads to rationing, meaning you're taking less than you should be taking for whatever issue you have. And oftentimes that leads to people getting sicker and dying because of it. Last thing here. In terms of pain, worry, and sadness, and how the poor compared to the wealthy. So pain, worry, sadness, and anger reported as experienced the day before or not are also all significantly higher among low-income cohorts than among wealthy ones, while reported satisfaction with life as a whole is significantly lower, according to our analysis of Gallup data. So you see here, the poor experience more physical pain, worry, sadness, stress, and anger than those who are either in the middle class or rich. So the cutoff is about $75,000 a year. If you're making about that, at least when this was taken, then your physical pain, worry, sadness, and stress and anger are much reduced compared to those that are making less than you. But yeah, it isn't just about death, which in itself is a serious issue that I already highlighted here. It's just about living every day. And because of the amount of worry, sadness, stress, and anger that people who are poor have, and just how many people are poor in the U.S., again, about 1 in 8 live in complete poverty. Living with that every day, that life alone is incredibly tough. And to not use your privilege and your power and your wealth, in Shapiro's case, to fight for that, to try and advocate for those people, to try and bring everyone up to fight for a society that works for everyone, to me, it's just disgusting. Whether or not he's a true believer in what he is saying or not doesn't matter. He is using his platform to spread trash, and ultimately, the people that are suffering at the bottom of society are the ones being most impacted by all of it.